Welcome to Squatchin Holler.
In the mist where the trees lean low, Squatchin Holler's got a tale to show. Whispers creep like a creature's faint howl. Every shadow's got a secret to growl. Monsters rise where the stories are told. Squatchin Holler where the legends are born. Are they here? Are they gone? Who can say? In the holler, the truth just slips away. Huge footprints fade where the creek runs thin. A lantern sways, let the search begin. Rustling leaves, but there's no one near. Is it the wind or the beast you fear? Every echo's a question, every rustle's a clue. Squatchin Holler's got its eyes on you. Monsters rise where the stories are torn. Squatchin Holler where the legends are born. Are they here? Are they gone? Who can say?
With your Squatchin Holler hosts, Roger Williams, Amanda Stowers, and Ashley Range. Remember, this podcast can be downloaded everywhere great podcasts are found. And now the show.
Oh, that would help if I turned the thing on, right? Y'all, we got a great guest tonight. I'm by myself. Amanda and Ashley, for the past 3 days, have been driving from the West Coast diagonally across the United States, and they just got to Amanda's house. So she's taking the night off. Welcome in, everybody. Good to see y'all. I noticed 30 minutes or so before the show started, y'all were already saying hello to each other, and we love it. We love to see y'all come in, and so it's going to be a little tougher tonight to get the comments because it's just me, but we're going to get it done. All right. So y'all, as some of y'all know, some of y'all have been watching these shows and researching for a long time. And every now and then we have somebody that's been doing it for decades. And, tonight's guest, Mr. Todd, he's got a lot to talk about, and we're going to talk about as much as we can. But y'all know me, I could talk all night, and he can too. We're going to try to keep it in a respectable time. Everybody, y'all welcome Todd Neiss in. And I hope I said his name right. Hey, Todd, how's it going?
Hey, how you doing? Yeah,
Good.
you got it right. And first of all, I've got to say that is the best bumper music I have ever heard. I love that tune. That is, I just say put that back on and put it, just put it on loop. But anyway, and number two, it's not just you, it's you and me, and you and I are going to have a good time tonight.
Yes, sir. We've talked on the phone a couple of times, and I'm gonna give y'all some advice. Todd's a good guy unless you interrupt him cooking breakfast. No,
That's a fact.
No, but I'm glad you brought that up because Doug did that. Doug Highcheck, he did the song, the music, and the video. And sometimes I'm like, how do I follow that? That's so good. But y'all know we haven't had an outro until tonight, and he tried to top the intro, and I love it. So at the end of the show, y'all, I'm gonna play that. It's a little long, but me and Todd will be jamming to that. But thank you for joining us. Pretty much all of us got into this by accident, and I'm a person that, if I'm riding a bus or I'm not driving, I'm looking at everything. I got to thinking about that. If I'd have been 5 minutes earlier or later, I wouldn't be here now. Back when that happened to me,
Right?
and your story. At first, it was just sheer luck, and I'm sure it shocked the crap out of you. You know, and this is a point I want to make to people that are listening on Spotify. The next day and all that. A lot of us didn't choose this. Uh, Things happen, and when you see something that's so incredible, the people handle it different. Some people put their head in the sand and don't want to talk about it, and some people want to know more. And Todd is one of those guys, and I'm excited to have him in. We got some great old school pictures that he sent me. Um, he y'all he got into this and was with absolute Bigfoot royalty. There's no other way to put it. So, and y'all come up with some questions, and towards the end we'll get to a few of them. I ain't gonna promise we'll get to all of them, but Todd, for the people that don't know, that are just getting into this, can you tell them a little? Just start with your first encounter and some background of what was going on, and then we'll dig into some other stuff.
Sure, sure. And you hit the nail on the head. We didn't choose this situation, if you want to call it that. It chose us, and it's what you do with it that makes a difference. And I have to tell you, you talk about try to educate people. I had a troll hit me hard today and try to downplay me and, oh, Bigfoot doesn't exist and you're a liar and all this stuff. And I said, I'll tell you what, you know what? I said, I don't blame you a bit, brother, because 5 minutes, a minute before that moment on April 3rd, 1993, I was exactly where you're at. I get it. It was an urban legend. It was a campfire tale. It was a bunch of BS. I spent a lot of time out in the woods. And what I did, and I just turned the tables on him. I said, brother, and I hope he's listening. I really hope he is, because I said, I just told him I can empathize with you because, I think all of us were there at one point or another, and unless we're just, into the whole fantasy unicorn thing,
Hmm.
I mean, I told him there's sometimes I almost wish I didn't see what I saw, but I can't unsee it,
Right.
you know? And
Yeah.
so I said, I challenge you to listen tonight, sir. I hope you are out there, because I said, if you do listen and when we get it all said and done and you still feel the way you do, then God bless you, move on, but I digress. I just want to put it out there, and I want people to know that those of us that are critical, skeptical, um, you know, I get it. I
Yeah.
get it. I
Yep.
get it. I was there, and after 34 years of hunting, fishing, hiking, mountain climbing, spent a lot of time outdoors. My dad was really good about getting us out there, and I saw nothing. I saw
Yeah.
nothing that would have even caused me to think that something like this would be out there. But then again, in hindsight, having seen what I've seen, and then immediately following, really going back out into the same areas I had spent so much time in, um, with that knowledge, that they do exist. It's amazing what you not amazing what you've missed all along, because
Mhm.
it's like asking, it's like me saying, there's mastodons, there's elephants out there, right? I'm not, when I'm hunting for deer or elk or what have you, I'm not looking for elephant tracks.
Right.
And so when you get out there and you're doing your thing, you're not, you don't even think about it. You don't, because it's just, dinosaur tracks. I mean, it's just not even in your purview. So But again, after seeing what I saw, and I'll get into that, you tend to have your eyes open. It's an epiphany that changes your life. And so I'm going to tell you about 25 seconds that changed everything for me. And that was on April 3rd in 1993. I was a sergeant in a combat engineer unit, and a lot of what combat engineers do involves explosives. A lot of explosives. I mean, the 4th of July is like totally ruined after what we did, but we're talking hundreds of pounds of explosives, minor earthquakes, mushroom clouds. But, it's fun. It was fun. Probably the best out of the 21 years I served, probably the funnest job I ever had. What guy wouldn't love, explosives? So anyway, we had 3 sites this particular day. There were 3 gravel quarries on some private timberland we had special access to go to. And we had blasted at the first 2. One was cutting charges. The second one scenario was a minefield that we had to breach a lane through. And the third and final site was a cratering charge where you'd train to blow a road in half to deny the enemy the use of that avenue. So we had just lit the fuses on about 250 pounds of ammonium nitrate. And of course, our standard operating procedure was to get in our vehicles and get the hell out of there. So we would move on to a mile or 2 away where we could, safely listen to the explosion, go back and check our work. And it was while we were en route, we lit the fuses, we get in line. There were 2 Humvees up front, Humvee Jeeps, 2.5 ton or deuce and a half, as we called them, troop transport canvas covered truck, and then 2 Humvee Jeeps in the back. I was in the second vehicle, so there was a lead vehicle ahead of us. I was actually a passenger, so I wasn't having to drive this truck down the road and focus on this little narrow, windy dirt, gravel logging road. I sat behind the driver, and it was actually a pretty nice day in April in the Coast Range, which is pretty rare. But I had the window down, and since I had hunted that area, so the Saddle Mountain unit was my hunting area. I hunted deer and elk there for years. So for me, it was natural to just look about the countryside and try to scope out wildlife. And we rounded this corner, this real long, arching right-hand turn. And almost immediately when we got into the turn, the trees cleared away enough to where I had a direct line of sight to the second blast site, where we had detonated a lot of C4 plastic explosive in that minefield breach we were talking about. And it came into view. And the first thing that just jumped out at me is just like these 3 dark figures standing down there. And of course, immediately my thought went to the other people, because they're obviously standing upright. And I thought, oh my God, some people got through our security cordon. And in fact, we had 2 layers of security. And so I was just like, oh crap. And we didn't have a radio in my particular Jeep, so there's nothing I could do. I couldn't call stop or anything, because I know a lot of people ask about that. But I see these 3 figures, and I'm like, holy. And it took me about, 2.5 seconds to realize what I was looking at were not people, not humans, if you would, as we know them, modern humans. And I say that because these things were black. I mean, black, very dark black.
Blacker than black, right?
Yeah, and the quarry is made up of basalt, and basalt is very much like a light gray, almost like a concrete gray, if you will. So the contrast between black against gray. Now, mind you, if they were standing with trees behind them, I never would have even seen them. True fact. But they were literally out in the middle of this quarry. And with that light gray background and their dark bodies, it was a very stark contrast. And I can make out their silhouettes. So they were all facing us, three of them. Again, the tallest one in the middle, I estimated, just looking at it, had been at least 8 feet, maybe not even 9 feet tall.
Wow.
But huge. I mean, the shoulders 4+ feet across, maybe 5 feet across. Barrel chested. You could literally see a taper from the barrel chest down to the waist, and then these legs that were really super long. But the thing that really got me were the arms. The arms went on all three. All three of them were kind of built the same way, but the arms went all the way down to the knees on all three of them. We got pockets in our jeans right at our waistline because that's where our arms kind of go naturally. But they would have to have pockets down on their knees to even be functional. But these arms just went forever. And it was not just that, but it was the activity they were involved in. And by that, I mean, that one in the middle, the biggest one of the three, stood just as still as a statue. These two, left and right of the bigger one, if you will, were engaged in this swinging thing. They were like, by that I mean they were like rocking side to side, left to right, back and forth, shifting weight from one foot to the other. And in the process, these long, super long, pendulous arms were swinging down by their knees. And they did this the entire time I looked at them. And by time, I should say, I estimated, this wasn't 5-10 seconds, something right in front of my car, or behind my car. I think it was a big. Now this is almost a half a minute. I estimate about 25 seconds, and in the when it comes to sightings, 25 seconds is a pretty long view, as I'm sure you know.
Yeah.
That's a good long view. I mean, it doesn't sound like something you say, 25 seconds, but we can all stop right now and look at our watches for 25 seconds and it'd be a long waste of time. But looking at what I was looking at, it seemed like forever, to be honest with you. But then, so they were doing this little, I wouldn't call it a dance. I mean, they were just rocking side to side, swaying back and forth. Anyway, 25 seconds went by, and then we took another turn, and I lost sight of them. And I just kind of collapsed back into my seat, knowing that I'd lost sight of them. I was just like, you can imagine, a million questions running through my head. I was like, how, why, when, what? WTF. I'm like, oh my God. OMG. No, I'm just like, it's traumatizing, to be honest with you. It is.
Well,
and I'm sure for any of your listeners that have seen it, it's traumatizing. It's a shock. It's a shock to your way of thinking, everything you've been taught, and more to the point, everything you haven't been taught, because this was not in the brochure, right? So, so it was probably less than a minute, 45 seconds. We were pretty close to where we were going to stop, where we could safely stop and wait for the explosion. And I had still the deuce and a half and 2 Jeeps coming in behind me. So when we finally came to a stop, I don't even know if we actually completely stopped. I jumped out of the Humvee and went jogging back up in the direction we just came, where the rest of the vehicles are still rolling in from, in hopes of being able to get another view. And unfortunately, I was not able to, because we had this stupid rule. They call it 100% integrity, and I get it. It's a safety thing. Excuse me. But it's you can imagine the danger involved in what we were doing, that everybody had to be accounted for. And that meant everybody had to be within eyesight of the main body, the main group unit, whatever you want to call it. And so I went as far as I dared, maybe 100 yards or so. And what kills me is I knew if I went another 50 yards, I probably would have been able to get a view of them. But I'm an NCO. I'm in charge. I got to play by the rules, right?
Right.
So anyway, I got as far as I could, and I'm trying to look over this stupid little berm, really, that was blocking my view because I so wanted to see him again. And while I was doing that, I heard somebody yell my name. And, I heard, "Hey, Neiss," and I look over to my right, and Sergeant Martin's looking at me and walking my direction. He goes, "What are you looking at?" I'm nothing. And Jeff kept coming my way. I remember he's smoking on a cigarette, and he comes up to where I'm at, and the rest of the trucks are just starting to come into the area. We still probably had 5 minutes left on the explosion before it went off, and he walks up to me and he goes, "I don't suppose you saw what I saw down at the second blast site." And not knowing what he saw
Right.
and not wanting to be a fool, I said, "I don't know, Jeff, what did you see?" And I remember he took a long drag off a cigarette, and he looked left and right and made sure nobody else was in earshot. And when he was satisfied they weren't, he said, "I saw 3 dark, hair covered, huge, Bigfoot, I think." And of course, at that, once I got over the initial shock, I went, "Yeah, yeah." I said, "I saw him too, brother." And so, I mean, it was cool to know that he shared that experience, that
Exactly.
trauma that I was still dealing with. But had he not, it really wouldn't have changed a whole lot, because I can close my eyes and see it as clearly as it was yesterday. I can't unsee it. So I mean, but it was kind of neat to know that there was another individual that had seen what I saw. And then
Right.
at that time, I should note, I was in the National Guard. So for those in your listening audience that don't know, unlike regular Army, National Guard, we're state militia, and we all have day jobs, but once a month we get together for a weekend, plus 2-week annual training. But we get together once a month to practice our skill sets. So what was even more amazing was, so that was early April. Early May, we all get back together again, and we had 2 more soldiers come forward and admit to seeing what Jeff and I had seen. So in the annals of Bigfoot encounters, it's pretty unique in the fact that multiple animal sightings are pretty rare. It's usually a single individual, a single creature, and then multiple eyewitnesses are again not as often as individuals. And then of course the nature of what we're doing, which was just blowing up the woods, their home. So those 3 things combined made it somewhat of a unique encounter amongst others, and it just kind of got traction, and people took notice, and here I am.
Well, when you were recounting that story, you relive it each time, and I'm thinking about
Mhm.
mine. And one thing for the new people that's never heard me say this, we can tell you numbers. We can say 6.5 foot, 9 foot, whatever, and we can describe it, but we cannot get the mass across to people until you see it. And people are like, "Well, you sure it wasn't a person?" And
Mhm.
right away, if it was a person, you probably would have panicked more to get them out of the area, right? But it stunned you to see what you were actually looking at, and that that's one of those points in time that it changes people's lives. And, you know, you being curious, and starting to dig in more has led you to some pretty amazing things. I mean, but think about the people you've met because of that.
You
mean,
know, I can, you know, I say all the time that I can't imagine really an incident that would take 25 seconds that would have impacted the rest of somebody's life. I suppose there are some situations, but I mean, anything like this, you know what I mean? Just the
right.
unexpected, the unexplained, and it's so funny. And you and I talked about this before. It's just like everything that's happened to me since April 3rd, 1993. Everything from literally where I live and who I'm married to and what I drive and what I do uh, has all gone back to just 25
Mhm.
seconds, you know.
Yeah.
And you're right, the people I've met along the way, you know, I remember this is so funny because I can't remember the last time I ever stepped into a library since I graduated high school, which was a long time ago. But when I came back from being in the field and came back to my regular civilian life job, I made a beeline for the county library and I checked out. I think they actually made me take a few books back. They said, "Oh, you can only check out 10 books at a time." I'm like, dang it, you know? And yeah,
That's
but
funny.
I mean, it's like, can I get help out? You know, no, it was like I had this mound of books, and I'm like, I'm gonna eat these up, and I need to know the latest, newest, greatest thing about these things. And because it never entered my mind before, I never watched the TV shows, I never read a single book about this stuff, and little did I know that over time I would meet the authors of most of those
Mhm.
books and literally become friends with them and share the stage with them. And who knew, right? It's like, um, thank you, Bigfoot. You
Yeah.
know, what can you do? Well, I mean, honestly, it was like, you know, I said earlier, I sometimes I wish it never happened, but you know what? I don't think I'd trade it for anything.
I agree with you. I've looked back up on the people that my circle got bigger,
Mm.
because of that. And now for a long time, that sighting happened when I was 14. I went 35 years before anything else happened, and it kinda lit the fire again. We had a rock thrown at us next to a tree that was a sapling that was broken over, and I'm like, "Wait a minute, is that I've seen stuff on YouTube. This is not a marker tree, is it?" Whatever. And so we started paying attention and digging in, watching, uh, whatever we could. And you're right. Once you learn more about this subject, you go back like when you were hunting when you were a teenager and like, wait a minute, I remember seeing this. Was it a marker? Was it that? I remember hearing this. I didn't know what it was. And you start questioning
But I mean, at the
your
time, you just dismissed it
you didn't know,
because
right? Yeah.
it didn't fit the paradigm. It didn't fit the hunt that you were engaged in. So you just kind of dismiss it. And then you're right. I mean, retroactively, you do think back and go, you know what? You know,
Mhm.
you know what I
Mhm.
mean?
I was in a tree stand at 11, and, at 11 years old, I was naive. I had me a 20 gauge single shot, slugged, hunting deer, and had something come through. I didn't see it. I had a weird feeling before it started breaking trees and growling and stuff, and I was screaming for my dad, and he was like, and this is 3 years prior to the sighting, and he was like, "Oh, you just ran off a big buck, you dummy." You know? And, well, I wrote it off as that, I'm 11 years old. He's probably right and whatever. But now it was only 150 yards from where I saw the Bigfoot 3 years later. So, you
Wow.
know, could and what
What are the odds
happens
of
is
that?
it exactly. So, and as I've started, when I went public, once you put it out there, it's a really good feeling, but also it's kind of scary. But I've had so many people come to me from my past that lived in our area, and it's like, Roger, thank you for telling that because I had this happen or I saw this, and it makes you feel good, and makes you feel better to put those pins on the map, so to speak. Uh,
Well, and I don't mean to interrupt, but I
oh,
mean,
you're
I
good.
I wanna pick up on what you're putting down. So for me, uh, again, initially, even with the corroboration of other eyewitnesses, I had a lot on the line reputation-wise. I was a vice
Mhm,
president of a shipping company. I was raising a family, a non-commissioned officer in the Army, and I had to ask myself, you know, is it worth
mhm,
people, risking your reputation that you work so hard to build? And is it worth having people go so far as to challenge your honesty, to challenge your integrity, to challenge your sanity, and for a time, I I just pretty much kept to myself. And it wasn't until I was, started getting introduced to a few other people that were involved, and realized I wasn't alone. And then coming to the realization that, no pun intended, but this was bigger than me,
mhm.
literally and figuratively. And, this was something scientifically and historically important that just couldn't be ignored. And so I did decide, I had two choices. It's a binary choice. It's like flipping a switch, either shut the hell up
Mhm.
or do something about it.
Yep.
And so I looked for a purpose. I looked for why me? Because when I think back, I think about, you know, what are the odds? Number one, and the odds are, I mean, you probably got better odds winning the lottery, um, to have what you and I have experienced. Again, you don't make it happen. They do, and they control the scenario. And but then again, the why, the big why me.
Yeah.
And so for me, um, I decided to look for a purpose, and that purpose for me, uh, I came to believe. I think it's fairly noble, and that is that I know they exist. I don't know how long they've existed or for how long they're going to continue to exist, but it seems to me they're pretty rare because they're rarely seen. Um, and we don't know the health of the species. And so, it's a romantic notion. You hear people say all the time, "Oh, leave 'em alone, they'll be fine. Just leave 'em alone, leave 'em alone." I'm like, well, based on what? Can you
Mm.
tell me how many there are today?
Right.
Can you, given you can, which you can't, but can you tell me how many there were 1,000 years ago?
Right. And
And more to the point, can you tell me how many there are going to be 1,000 years from now? And the bottom line is we don't know, and that's the thing. So for me, my purpose has focused on conservation or protection, which
right.
there's a lot of moving parts to that because obviously they have to be officially recognized and whatnot. But
Right.
then getting back to what you were saying before, um, when you talk to other people, you get this good feeling inside, and because people will come to you and say, "Thank you for at least you coming forward," because if nothing else, either it gives them reassurance that they're that they, I don't think they need reassurance they saw what they saw, but it gives them maybe some comfort in the fact that maybe um, it's a little more permissive to be able to talk about it
Right.
publicly. And I don't know about you, but for me, it's really become cathartic. You know what I mean? it's almost I hate to say it, but it's almost like psychologically release for me to be able to come out and say, hey, I'm coming out of the Bigfoot closet, and
Right.
I'm just gonna, I'm gonna just put it out there, and I don't really care what you think.
Right.
And it was like this troll that was hitting me up today. I said, you know what? I get it, brother. I was you,
Yep.
and I wish I could give you really the gift that I received that day, that moment, that instant. I wish I could gift wrap it and give it to you, but I can't. But I hope someday you'll be able to experience what I did.
Mhm.
And
Or at least
and
know at least
but until then, I get it. I get it. I was you. So be skeptical, be critical. We need criticism as
Yep.
long as it's constructive criticism. But if you're just going to be a pessimist because you don't want to believe it, that's a whole nother deal. But for me, again, it's very cathartic for me to be able to go around and speak at these conferences that I do. I've spoken at 10 of them this year around the country, and I just love sharing my research and my experiences, like I am with you and your audience. And it's, but yeah, I get that. When people come up to you and go, "Thank you," you know.
and, that was an unexpected part of this. When I told mine for the first time publicly, it was like this big weight off my shoulders and, like you're like, "Okay, I know what's gonna happen." But it's surprisingly though, I think when 3 or 4 years ago when I told my story for the first time was a whole lot different than when you told yours for the first time. The public's kind of, acceptance of maybe or, you're eating Slim Jims, and it's got Bigfoot on it, and you got Dr. Squatch soap, and it's kinda in people's minds now. So when you came out and told your story, it had to be 100 times worse than
Yeah, well, yeah, the Slim Jim. Are you ready? No,
I know
I'm
it
not, but hey, there it is. So
it
no,
helps and hurts the subject.
okay. So since you brought it up, so the first time I spoke publicly, now I had the first time I said anything publicly, a friend of mine from back east said, I've talked to this radio host, talk show host. Yeah, would you be willing to talk to him? And I said, oh God. Okay, it's New York. I'm on the other side of the country, and it was at WABC, in fact, in New York. And I actually have a cassette tape somewhere around here of that was sent to me. But the first time I talked publicly, and I mean in public, in with a crowd of people in front of me, I'll never forget it because it was 1996. I was asked to travel to Harrison Hot Springs, British Columbia, where they had held this symposium, I guess, for a couple of years before I ever came along. But and it was really a who's who in Bigfooting, and I was a who you.
Who are you?
And but I wasn't asked to be there for as a researcher per se, although I had been quietly doing my own research for 3 years or so up until then. I was the token eyewitness, right?
Mhm.
And so I get up there, and there's probably I think about 300 people in the conference room of this hotel at Harrison Hot Springs, and um, man, again, I was way out of my element. I didn't realize like would you say the
Royalty, Bigfoot
the
royalty.
royalty,
Right.
the celebrities in Bigfooting that were there. I just I would eventually learn. But anyway, so they put me up there. Yeah. And it was like an AA meeting. I'm like, hi, my name's Todd. I'm a Bigfoot eyewitness. Hi, Todd. No, but not quite. But so I told my encounter story, and then I thought, okay, that's what they asked me to do. They didn't pay me. I mean, I drove up there on my own nickel. But I thought, what the hell? And I started walking off the stage. Well, some of your audience may know who Daniel Perez is.
Oh yeah.
He was the MC, and he's up there wearing a suit and tie. And I said, thank you very much. Bye now. And I start walking off, and then Danny's like, pushes me back out there. He goes, no, you got to take questions. You got to take questions. And then we're like, that was not in the brochure, but it's what you got to do, right? So I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. Anybody have any questions? And I'll never forget the first person. He didn't even raise his hand. He just stood up, and he was toward the back of the audience. I can just see it. He is toward the back of the auditorium, and he was a reporter for the nearby Agassiz newspaper. I can't remember the name of the paper. But anyway, I said, yeah, you in the back. And he was like, yeah, so you just described this so-called encounter you had. Give us one reason why we should believe one word you just said. And I went, and it was weird. It was weird, brother, because I was like, I don't even know where it came from, but I was both caught off guard. Obviously, that's not what I expected as the first question. But I was also a little bit, I don't know, pissed.
Perturbed, yep.
And so, no, I like pissed. You can bleep that later. No, so I don't even know where it came from, but I just was kind of shocked for a second, and then I was like, "How dare you?" And I said, I was asked to come here to share an experience that I had. Whether you or anybody else in this room believes a word I said will never change the truth.
There you go.
And this guy just kind of went, and people started clapping. And I'm like, next question. But not really. I was like, I want out of here. But anyway, but that was my debut. But anyway, I digress.
Well, we share a few things in common. The first Bigfoot conference I ever went to was in 2023 in Gatlinburg. It was a year after my dad had passed, this year anniversary. So we went just to get away from here. And I ended up on stage telling my story. And I only had a few minutes.
Did you plan on that, or were you just kind of...
No, not really. It's like the Brian Sharp, he was like, hey man,
Brian.
He said, I might need somebody, and I'm like, well, I'll be a backup. Well, somebody didn't show up or didn't want to do it.
Never volunteer.
Yeah, I know, right? And it ended up being a good thing. I met a lot of great people. I talked to more people in the crowd because I'm inquisitive because if there's an old man and a lady here, I'm like, oh, what brings y'all here? What are you interested in the TV show that some of the people on the Finding Bigfoot were there, or are you a witness? And I saw some great evidence on the phones, pictures, like footprints, trackways, people that they're not going to fake them. You can't, these tar and chip roads.
What do they got to gain?
Well, they got the gain.
Yeah.
Exactly. And I'm like you, I'm to the point now to where I'm not trying to prove to anybody that they exist. I'm trying to figure out what they are, why they are, and you know, and I've done the same thing as you. I started like, why me? You know, it sounds like a natural progression of thought and thinking. And once you become aware and you start going out to where they possibly are, and you find more tracks and you find more signs, and some throw a fit and start throwing stuff and vocalizing, you know, obviously that you know it's a big creature. Um, Sometimes I come home and I'm like, what am I doing? You know, because I'm just investigating, right? I'm not logging
Right.
things down. It's just a personal thing, and I've got a group of friends, and you know, there's people in this chat right here. I know for a fact that have had encounters, and I've been to their location and found evidence. So it's not like nobody here's wanting to be Bigfoot famous or anything like that. These shows like this, if you can get the good guests to get the truth out there, help people in chat, because it's therapeutic for me too. We say all the time, we take
Yeah.
the subject seriously, but we don't take ourselves seriously. We like to have fun with it, but um, it gets in your blood. The AA meeting gets in your blood, like meeting with the like-minded and people who've had the similar experiences, you know.
Sure.
So
Sure. A lot of what, you know, I like I said, I spoke at, I think it's a record for me, but I spoke at 10 conferences this year. And normally, you know, half a dozen, maybe even 3 or 4, but this year was crazy. But I go to a lot of these conferences just as a spectator.
mhm,
For me, just for the social aspects, you know, and because I know most of the speakers, you know, we've
yeah,
crossed paths over a few decades, and it's just fun to hang out together. And but no, you're right. You have to internalize it. You have to find a purpose. I think eventually. I mean, I think as time goes on, you know, you got to really ask yourself if I'm going to dive into this, the because you know, it does consume you. That I need to find not only a purpose, but perhaps even a legacy, and what I leave behind. You know, I've got over, you know, 3 decades of research, and I could get hit by a bus tomorrow, and nobody would know jack because I'm too uh too anal to write that book because I keep visualizing a 2,000 page book, and I just gotta like start eating that elephant one bite at a time instead of the whole thing. And I will. But you know, the bottom line is that I think you get to a point where you stop caring about what other people think, and that's where I think that the empathizing comes in handy when you do run into critics. Um, you know, you just say, "Hey, I get it," you know, and move on. You don't let it bother you. But I think there is a point at which you do internalize it, and you start looking for that purpose, and it's no more about trying to entertain anybody is it is more about sharing what
yep,
you've learned. And I that's what I love about it. You know, this year especially, you know, I've it's funny you get and I'm probably going to piss a few people off here, but I'm not going to name names. I'm just going to say, you know, you know, these there are celebrities
mhm,
in this field, you know, especially those that have gone on to become cast members in TV series. And, you know, so, and then along with that, you've got groupies, and a lot of these people come to these events to, you know, get that selfie,
mhm,
to hear these people get that selfie and an autograph, you know, and then there's people like you and me that is in the background, like, uh, I've got things to say, but it's at one point, you get really, you have to draw a line between, how do I say this? So a lot of people that are in this circle, if you will, um, the people that do tour and talk and they tend to repeat themselves a lot.
Mm-hmm.
And when it comes to celebrities, their appearance, at times seems to be more performative than it is educational, if you will.
Right.
For me, I'm constantly going down the rabbit hole, trying to learn new things because you know what? None of us have got it right yet.
Right.
So I'm like, you would not believe the things I've gotten into. I mean, this is great having this kind of conversation, but I mean, I could go into so many different things.
It-
But I'm going to say, like, one of the things I've recently got into is trying to find, we got two camps: science, biology, flesh and blood, and you got the paranormal, woo, supernatural, and they are so far apart. And I've literally, because I have friends in both camps, that I've thought,
Mhm.
is there a way I can
Yep.
stand on that third rail between the
Right.
two and bridge the gap between the two, in so much as I can say, hey, scientific people, have you ever really, really tried to even consider any sort of rationale to why these people over here are having these experiences, seeing these anomalies and whatnot? No, this is like crazy. And then
Right.
over here, you got these other people going, you scientific people will never understand. I saw this, and the truth of the matter is, and again, because I know a lot of them, there's always a little bit of truth to everything. Is you know, can I find scientific explanation to explain their experience, to explain the anomaly they saw?
Right.
And in doing so, again, bridge that gap to where, you know, my issue isn't that you didn't have that experience, because I can tell they're very sincere and they're very
Mhm.
honest. And when they tell me these things, and it's not anecdotal, it's a lot, hundreds of people saying the same thing. My thing is, I don't disagree with you that you had an experience. I may have an alternative theory to explain how that happened
Right.
and why that happened, and your interpretation may be off. Let me give you a different interpretation. So this is kinds of things that I'm working on, and I've made it a point this year to make sure that in every presentation I give, there are no two alike,
Mhm.
or at least there's always new material in everything. And I've had people come up to me, with, again, I won't name names, but big names, celebrities, you know, and tell me, I've had a great time, but I have to say, I really enjoyed your talk, and I learned more things from what you had to say than all the other speakers together. And you kind of talk like an instructor, like a professor, but there's no better compliment to me, because I'm not a professor. I have a degree in multi studies, but which is a nice way of saying a college GED. But you know, uh, yeah, I know a little bit about everything, enough to be dangerous. But
Hey, you
but
sound
no,
like me.
I that's what I'm after. Is I want people, when they leave, or when I'm done talking, to really scratch their head and go, I never really thought about it that way. You
Yep.
know,
And Todd, to be honest with you, I know you've probably never seen us. When I started the show, before I started the show, I was like, "Okay, you're right. All these camps over here and over there." I'm like, "How can I be somebody that goes down the middle, and how can we all be a little bit right?" So that means we have to listen to each other and, like, put that in the back pocket. It may come up later, Um, you know, we all know about the stories and then the truth lies somewhere in the middle anyway. If you're not talking to each other, you may have a piece of the puzzle that this other person needs, the aha moment, right? But
Or
if you're
they
not,
might have a
they might
piece
have,
you don't know
yes,
about.
absolutely.
Yeah.
And that's my mindset also, because I've had weird stuff happen to me. Now, I don't go out here and say, well, it was connected to Bigfoot. It might be in an area we were investigating, and now that might be because of the makeup, some of the minerals in the ground, some of the sulfur in the water, energy,
There you go.
with the orbs, right? So, and we're you're probably
Uh-oh, you froze up.
here, y'all.
Oh, you're back.
I'm back. I don't know what that was.
You need to
Solar
put
flare.
another quarter in.
Solar flare, y'all. Boy, you too.
Yeah, there you go.
We are old when you putting the quarters in. Um, but no, just you know, I just wanted to make that point because that's the way we feel about it also. And it's I told my son a long time ago, people are tired of hearing this. The second you think you know everything, that's as smart as you're gonna get. If you're okay with that, that's fine. But if you're wanting to learn new things, you gotta keep that mind open and listen to people that know more than you. So
Sure.
Um, and that keeps me I try to layer my guest. I try to, have different types of guests, and you know what I'm talking about with that, because we may learn something. Somebody may have an idea or make a comment, and a researcher may be listening and like, "Oh, I never thought about that," like you said. The thing is, if with your speeches and with this show, if one person leaves here thinking, then I've done what I wanted to do. You know what I mean? If
Sure.
they're curious and wanting to learn more, then that's all we can do. Um, and
There you go. So hey,
yes,
let's
sir.
uh
You
let's
want to?
uh let's flip the script. Let's talk about something other than ourselves and what we've experienced and how things go. Let's I always wanted to like make one of these little spinny wheel deals and
Yeah, not
like a
knowing what's
pie
coming.
thing and just let's spin it and let it see what topic it lands on to. But so what do you I'm gonna play um host here. What is your perception, I wouldn't say conclusion because none of us have that, but
Right.
what is your supposition, I guess, as to what this species, I don't like using creature, beast, or critter, what is your idea of where this species falls within biology? And I don't know if we'll agree or not,
Ooh.
but I would just love to hear your opinion.
Well, no, that
Or go ahead.
so of course it'd be speculation. Um, I'm right now because I f- I think this is subject's fluid. The more you learn and more you roll out. I have a feeling from talking to so many different people, and they're locked on to their area of the country or their holla or their I feel like there's possibly more than one type of these things, possibly. Like what you saw, and let's say from the skunk ape to the Northwest, there's obvious differences, but it's
Or
probably
Patty.
because or Patty, because the one I saw didn't look like Patty
Mm-mm.
in the waist. We talked about that, right? So was it a younger one? Was it, a younger male?
Was she
You know,
pregnant?
was she pregnant?
No.
Um, now
But
if I can find something in nature, that helps me a lot, right? Well, I've my nature, I did a DNA test and I'm part Neanderthal. So is it something in the timeline that two different groups got together and there was another offspring? I don't know. I don't know whether people talk about the different ones. Of course, the one everybody always brings up, Pithecus and all that. Um, I feel like it could be a multiple answer.
Well, there's obviously multiple possibilities. Now, when you talk about Neanderthal or more better said, Homo
Mhm,
Neanderthal, um, from the Neander Valley in Europe, we're talking genus and species. For instance, like the binomial nomenclature, Homo sapien, Homo erectus. We go on and on. But there were a lot of, maybe a lot of your listeners do or don't know, but there are today 14 known Homo genus species. In other words, Homo for human. So when we say human being or Homo sapien, we all think about modern human, but there were
mhm,
13 other iterations that are all said to have gone extinct, and Neanderthal being one of them. And it's funny you should say that your DNA showed that you had a bit of that in you, because my theory is that Cro-Magnon, which still has not had been ascribed a genus, but Homo heidelbergensis, Homo neanderthal, um, uh, there these species actually lived together. There were four species known to literally have lived together in mostly in Europe at one time, where old school said one turned into the other, turned into the other, turned into the other.
mhm,
It's not how it worked. But what's interesting is they all turned into one. Our family tree, if you will, was more of a family bush. And so what happened, I believe, is Neanderthal, Cro-Magnon, uh, your Heidelbergensis, even the Homo denisovans didn't go extinct in the classical um, definition of extinction, but rather I believe they bred out.
mhm,
And let's make it clear that there's a difference between hybrid, which is interspecies, versus mutation. So that was interesting, is we had four distinct. There are actually six that lived together around, at least that we know of, lived at the same time on Earth. But those four in Europe were competing with each other for everything, for habitat, for resources, and what really happened is the Homo sapien really, um, there were some distinctions between them and the others, but the others basically succumbed um, to becoming either extinct or um, assimilating
mhm.
into what is now known as Homo sapien. Now, uh, I contend that what we're dealing with is potentially a 15th species of Homo. That is human. And I believe that the Bigfoot, Sasquatch, whatever you want to call them, I believe that they are of the Homo genus, but they are a very distinct species of the Homo genus. And they still survive to this day, albeit in very small numbers and in very secluded areas. But one of the things that led me to that, and away from the Gigantopithecus model, was, first of all, Gigantopithecus was essentially an oversized orangutan,
Mhm.
an orangutan, um, and very sloth-like in terms of movement, and as large as they were literally consumed with nonstop eating, and but very slow in movement to retain a low metabolism. But the concept of them traveling so far north into China, Vietnam, Kamchatka, and into what would be during the opening of the Beringia Strait, which would have been tundra. There was nothing there, weather-wise, climate-wise, or food-wise, that they would have been able to use to survive. However, my theory is that this 15th species may have been indigenous to the New World or North America, the North American continent, all along. And as such, as opposed to Europe, which again, we had 4 different species competing against each other, if the Bigfoot, I hate that word, to be honest with you, but if it will just say, if this species originated, was indigenous, as was a lot of megafauna during the Pleistocene and through ice ages, if it existed here for perhaps millions of years without any competition, without any genetic exchange, we'd be really talking about the ultimate apex species and one of the purest, genetically purest species on the planet, which is amazing when you think about it. But the main thing that really got me away from Paranthropus and Gigantopithecus was the locomotion, the bipedalism. Yeah, a few of your Australopithecines or Pithecines in general, maybe 10% of them could actually walk bipedally, but clearly 75% or more of the Homo species, the hominin versus the hominid, the hominin, the humans, 75% of those all have walked bipedally, and the genetic physiological changes that have to take place from literally the foot on to all the way up to the skull, the spine, the hips, the knees, all of that is just too much for it to fall back into the hominid class, if you will. The first 6 iterations of the 14 species we know couldn't walk bipedally. You know that? Not as a normal locomotion.
Well, and that goes back to, again, the region of the Earth. Everything is designed to survive in their region.
Exactly.
So if you can tell a lot about it, you could a trained eye, you could show somebody a animal they've never seen before, and they could watch it move and observe what it would eat and all that, and kind of tell you maybe if it grew up in the mountainous region or whatever. I mean, it's like, I don't even know what example to give, but like the goats, the mountain goats, these things walking on the side of a ledge or whatever, their brains, their foot coordination, like with a donkey, it's everything is built to survive a certain area. Now, if they spread out over time, just the fact that I could have some hogs back here and they get out, and within a few weeks they're turning feral. It doesn't take that long. Now, I'm not saying everything happens that quick, but if you just, I never thought about that. I never knew much about the slow moving, sloth-like, and that's not what we're seeing.
No, not at all.
Not at all.
No, but everything adapts, like you say. There's adaptations and mutations that happen even within Homo sapiens. And for example, let's just look at skin tone and hair and whatnot between. I mean, just within the human species, excuse me, I can't say that anymore. The Homo sapien species, of human. I mean, there's so many different personalities. I mean, we can get into human behavior and human psychology, or but we can look at, geographically going back prior to modern aviation and transportation, where we were still pretty much situated in our respective native lands,
Mhm.
where people from Africa needed more melatonin
Mhm.
in their skin in order for them to survive under harsh, brutal sunlight
Yeah.
conditions all the time. And then as people moved into Asia and Europe, they didn't need so much melatonin, but they might have needed more hair,
Right. If
or
if they lived
uh,
under a canopy, their eyes may be collect more light, right?
or vice versa in
Vice
Asia, where they changed,
exactly.
their eyes are a little less open, or when you look at Native American, all
Mhm.
this stuff, we see different mutations, like you just mentioned that, the difference in goats and whatnot. There's going to be mutations depending on what survival requires of us. I can show
Mhm.
you a chart of probably 200 mammals that used to live during the Pleistocene. And interestingly enough, there's probably 75 or so that still survive to this day. And the Pleistocene wasn't that long ago, 11, 12,000 years ago on back. But what's interesting is that most of the surviving mammals from the Pleistocene to today are smaller versions of their ancestors.
Mm.
And again, that's just adaptation and lack of resources, maybe competition for the same resources. Their metabolism slows down in order for them to survive on less food. Blah 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 blah. I
Right.
mean, but anyway, it's very interesting. But I just want to throw that, as just a game changer a
No,
little
it
bit.
yeah,
I
it very
again,
interesting.
I think just based on their physiology and the preponderance of locomotion, bipedal locomotion in the human species, the hominin species, more so than the hominid, which is, your Gigantopithecus and your uh, Paranthropus and whatnot, and Pithecus would fall into. It leads me to believe that they have to be human, especially in consideration, like I said, the first 6 out of the 14 we know of walked on all fours. We have a species that's walking clearly upright bipedally and very comfortably so.
It that's the
So
word that's the word, comfortable.
I
Yep.
think they fit more into the human genus than any other out there.
Yeah, and you can be and people, I know you get this. I'm fixing to, piss you off again. Uh, you sure it wasn't a bear?
Yeah, yeah.
Uh, every time I've ever seen a bear, Todd, it looked like a bear, and so and the thing is, you get a bear walking on 2 legs, sure, they can do it, but do they look comfortable? Do they look like they could walk 26 miles standing up? No, they're not built for that, right? So, yeah, and that's one thing I told you I got to see was the walk up the hill, and that all I needed to know besides the color, besides the size of it and all this, seeing it walk up that hill, I knew that I couldn't do that. And not just the
Exactly.
speed, not the just the speed, the actual way it was doing it. And me and you would have to lean forward and get her, we'd be stumbling. This was and I hate to use the word smooth, but it's just the way it
Well, very,
is.
very fluid, yeah.
Very fluid, yes. Um, y'all you wanna, y'all, we could have a 10-hour show here, but and I think if he would like to come back sometime and discuss some of his other ideas. You said that, that you had an idea about the hair and everything. That that illustration I showed you, was that something that have you ever seen that or talked about that before where it's black for the first inch and then the last 2 inches was like fiber optic clear?
Yeah,
And
yeah. In fact, it's funny you should say that. Well, I'm going to real quick. If you see what I'm sitting on here, I don't know if you can tell, but this is a black bear pelt.
okay.
Okay, and it's going to be part of my experiment. But I love it so much on my chair. I may have to get a different one. But here's seriously, it's funny you should bring that up because it's like I have right here. This is fiber optic wire.
Mhm.
Okay. And so, and you notice as I pull it away, it just blends into the background, right?
Mhm.
So fiber optics is made to absorb light, color, and transmit it through this entire bundle. In fact, I could touch a light to this end of this bundle. This is 100 feet, and it'll come out on this other end exactly the same color. I have 1,000 feet of this, and I plan to experiment with just what you're talking about, and that is, and we may have to talk about the whole polar bear situation where the guard hairs on polar bears are clear, and that polar bears are not as stark white as we think they are. They're actually kind of a dirty brown color, but the guard hairs that extend to these, they're clear, like fiber optics, that will absorb the ambient light and color that surrounds them. So if they're out on the ice field or snow field or whatever, it pulls in the light and color that surrounds them and gives them the perfect camouflage. So one of the ideas, one of my experiments is going to take this bear hide and infuse literally tens of thousands of these fiber optic hairs through half of this hide. And if my theory is correct, if it works along the way of the polar bear, if I hide out in the forest in different settings, both backdrops and different lighting, that I'm going to guess that probably half of that hide, at least the half that I've infused with these fiber optic guard hairs, so to speak, will make that half of the hide blend into the background. And that's just one of the things I'm working on. And I have some other theories as to how they make camouflage, and I don't think we have enough time. How are we doing on time, by the way?
We're hour and 17 minutes in.
We're overtime.
Oh, we're good. No, we can go as long or as little as you want to. You want to show some pictures from the old days?
Well, may I take a quick break?
Yeah.
Maybe you can do some shadow puppets.
I'll tell you what I do. Y'all, I'll show the new outro while he's taking
there
a
you
break.
go.
And it's about 3 minutes long, and
Perfect.
we'll Doug did this just like the intro, and he nailed it, y'all. So I'm gonna show the outro. We're not leaving.
I love it.
We're
You
not
got it.
leaving.
Roll it.
Roll it.
Roll it.
Roll that bean footage. All right, beautiful bean. So y'all, here's the new outro, and thanks to Doug, it's almost 4 minutes long, and y'all hang in there with us.
Down in the pines where the water runs black, where the moss hangs low and the night leans back. The stories whisper about a shadow tall, big feet moving where the moonlight falls. Some say it be, some say it ghost in the trees. Some say trouble blowing in with the breeze. But around here, man, we know the call, or we just call them friends, the Squatchin Holler. So light that fire, let the cattails shake, hear the night birds cry and the copperheads wait. If you hear a howl in the Georgia fall, there ain't no wind and it ain't no dawn. When the creek runs cold and the shadows get taller, yeah, you cross a line in the Squatchin Holler, where the legends walk and the brave men falter. Better mind your step in that Squatchin Holler. jaw. Red eyes burning like a summer cold. A left track's big enough to swallow your soul. But the old folks laugh, say, don't you fear. Critters been living here for hundreds of years. Treat them with respect when the moon gets smaller, and they'll let you live in Squatchin Holler. So light that fire, let the swamp drum roll. You can hear that beast right down in your soul. If you hear a grunt from the river cog, it ain't no bullfrog barking at all. When the swamp runs still and the crickets get softer, you're not alone in that Squatchin Holler, where the brave think twice and the fools walk farther. Lord, keep watch on that Squatchin Holler. Some say he guards at Old Pine Ridge. Some say he walks from bridge to bridge. But one thing's sure, when the night comes down, something big still calls this ground. So bank that fire, let the night get deep, let the willows whisper while the kudzu creeps. If you catch a glimpse through the midnight holler, just nod your head, don't scream and holler. 'Cause the wild runs free and the legends get taller. Out where he roams in Squatchin Holler, we ain't scared, but we sure stay cautious down in the dark of that Squatchin Holler.
All right, man. I tell you what, Doug is. Hold on, we got Todd back. Man, he was busy. You're quick. That was that military timing, wasn't it?
Oh, I had dinner, walked the dog, had a smoke. No, we're good.
You got it done. I was watching in the background. He took a whole tour of the whole neighborhood. But yeah, Doug, once again, man, he's just a genius. He's good at that.
Love it.
It's he has fun doing that, y'all. He's I guess it's in his blood, to create stuff, and we appreciate him doing that. But
So hey,
yeah,
I just had to ask you real quick. Any of your listeners have any questions? Or anything pop up?
anybody that has any questions, go ahead and put them in here. I do have one.
Not that I have answers. I just curious.
I don't know is acceptable on here. So Verax always has good questions. It
Yes,
says,
I'm wearing pants.
as I'm not.
No, right on.
Has Todd developed an opinion on tree break structures, gifting, glyphs, and other trademarks of Sasquatch?
Yes. Next question. No. So let's just say tree structures. Okay. In 32 plus years, and not recently, but over the course of my investigations in the field, I have found a grand total of 4 structures that really don't really meet the criteria of a lot of what I see online, and that's a lot of these cross trees, or even a jumble of trees, or like you mentioned, the glyphs. Not to say that they don't exist, but what I have observed, I found 2 in Oregon and 2 in Washington State, and what I consider legitimate structures are more along the lines of what I would say were literally engineered shelters of sorts. That is to say that what I found were generally made out of alders, anywhere between 6 to 8 inches diameter, where trees were either uprooted, partially uprooted, or literally broken off a couple feet off the ground and stacked against a main support tree in such a manner that would defy any sort of weather phenomenon. And by that I mean, people can say, well, snow and ice builds up on trees, they fall. Trees that just rot fall. If you want to talk about X's, I can show you W's, A's, V's, T's. We can go on and on and on. But what I'm talking about is something that you can literally get inside of and be fairly well protected from the elements. And nothing within miles of it that looks anything like it. So, in other words, a real standalone sort of structure that, and when I say engineered, I mean that you can stand under this thing and reverse engineer it by simply looking at what's the lowest, what's the lowest tree in the stack. That was the first one that went down, and it may come from the west. And then you simply look for the next one that's stacked atop of that one. And interestingly enough, it came from the south. And then the third one, easily enough, you just kind of pick it apart. You kind of mentally disassemble it, and you'll find the third one might have came from the north. And they come from every angle of the compass and build upon one another to the point that you could literally stand in there in a rainstorm and not get wet. The other thing I would find is the ground underneath was completely devoid of any vegetation whatsoever, as if it's something had spent enough time under there to simply kill any sort of ground vegetation. Again, I found one with Joe Beelart on Fish Creek off the Clackamas River. The second one I found on the Wishkah and Winooski River with Fred Bradshaw during an investigation in the Aberdeen watershed in Washington. Third one I found actually in Ape Canyon on the east flank of Mount St. Helens. And the last one I saw was around Ripplebrook Ranger Station, again up on the Clackamas drainage. But again, completely isolated, standalone structures that just by, again, just disassembling it and visualizing it, how it was assembled, it just defies any sort of weather phenomena. When you get down to the minutiae and you talk about glyphs and just like little, twigs and things that are seem to be arranged in a particular pattern and try to make something of that. I'm not a big fan of that. Again, anytime somebody says, Bigfoot can do something that seems extraordinary, my first question is, show me any other animal, known species, that can do that. I mean, if you say Bigfoot can fly and shoot flames out his butt, okay, show me another animal that does that, and we've got a starting point. When it comes to glyphs, the only thing I found that really approaches that sort of behavior is that of the bonobos in Africa. These are of large subspecies of chimpanzees that when they were studied by primatologists in the wild, what was interesting is at night they would all assemble in one tree or one structure of trees and spend the night there. In the morning, they would all drop to the ground and seemingly go in 100 different directions. And by nighttime, that entire troop would end up in another tree, but all together. And by following them, what they discovered was that these bonobos, these large chimpanzee-like apes would literally break leaves and branches apart. Anytime there was a junction in a game trail, whether there was an option to go left or right, the members of the troop would break apart leaves and twigs and stack them on the particular trail that they were taking. And over time, they got so they were to where they could read that sign that they could literally sleep in at night and catch up with them in the afternoon simply by reading that sign that they left behind.
That's
But I don't
amazing.
know about the broken branches. They may signify something, but these little microglyphs, I don't know. I don't know. It's possible, I suppose, but
And
uh,
we've got some
I
good
don't.
questions, but I wanna add something, being curious and trying to figure out things when I first started getting into this, uh, people were talking about structures and different things like that. So I'm like, okay, I need to educate myself. And so I went to, I think his Facebook page is Primitive Camping, where people went out and would build structures to hide in and camp overnight, and then they would go to the next, mountain over or whatever. And some of those, it was eye opening, because I mean humans are pretty crafty, and you, it's not a 100%, but go check some of those pages out, y'all. And some of this stuff is completely different, like the nest that they found out, and with the Olympic project.
Right.
Those are amazing, but they're for a purpose, and the fact that they're built as kind of like primates would build a nest. It's I feel like we need to look different places, like you said. My thing is, I say, if I can find it in nature, I start right there and then move on. So, but here's a good question. This kind of leads into what what is your favorite memory from any expedition with Peter Burns?
Oh Lord. Oh my
Can I
God.
show a couple pictures while you're talking?
Sure. You mean
And
like the time I left this 84-year-old man stranded up in the mountains while I had to hitch a ride into town to get a fuel pump for my Blazer on a 90-degree day? No. Oh God, there's so many. Um, I spent a week with him at a secluded gold mining cabin on this claim a friend of mine had. We were actually investigating another claim, the Monumental gold mine, where some miners had recently purchased the claim and were starting to work it, moved a trailer in, set up a roof over it. And in the night, they were getting all kinds of strange vocalizations and rocks being thrown off the hillside down into all around their camp. And this monumental mine was literally called that for a reason. It was basically a little town at one point. They had a big stamp mill and run by hydraulics. There were a bunch of cabins and stores and a livery for the horses, but it had been long abandoned. So most of these cabins and the structures had collapsed. But the hard rock mine obviously was still there, and these guys wanted to work it. And Peter called me one day and he says, Todd, I've heard about this. People contacted me and they wanted me to come investigate. And I wondered if you'd like to join me. And I'm like, oh, wow. Yeah. Twist my arm.
Yes.
And it just so happened, this is weird because it was up in the Blue Mountains, not the ones in that you hear about with the Freemans up in Washington, but it was in the Blue Mountains of Oregon near the town of Granite. And I happened to have had a friend who happened to have 7 hard rock mine claims in that area, along with this cabin. And I got a hold of my friend Tony, and I said, I already had a key to the padlock to the cabin, but it's like you don't go up in those places without permission, or you get shot. And so, but he said, yeah, you can crash up there. Just, whatever firewood you burn, make sure you cut it and leave some more. And so I had an amazing 5 or 6 days up there, and we went up to this Mountain Middle Mine a couple of different times to talk with the miners, and that was amazing. Peter and I, well, one of the first expeditions we did was in 1998, and I think you were showing some pictures there with Peter in his little camouflage Suzuki Samurai. Yeah, he loved that little thing. It was his baby, and so that was up there at the base of Saddle Mountain, not far from where I had my original sighting, but 5 years later. And since 1998, and I was very fortunate enough not just to have Peter Byrne along with me, but Ron Moorhead as well. And if you look at the background in that picture, you'll see this camper that we used as our base camp. Saddle Mountain is in the background. If you look way back there, then it goes up. It's like 3,000 feet. This picture is a picture of a bait station that was custom built by Joe Beelart. Some of you guys might know him. He's a published author and researcher. He built us this we call it the Masturbator 2000. And I can't make that up.
Hillary, quit commenting. I'm
serious.
You're gonna set everybody off. That's funny.
Hey, it worked. But anyway, so that lower level we'd put a heating unit, and the middle level we'd put bait, and the heating unit would heat up the bait on the second level, and then the top was just a little roof thing. But we had a catastrophic failure with that because all those panels, and it's kind of hard to see, they were made out of sheet metal, stainless steel, that Joe was too concerned that we were going to cut ourselves on the edges. So he put this plastic hoses. He had split this clear plastic hose and fitted around the edges of each of the levels. And well, as you can probably imagine, the heat from one of our gas stoves, that one of three different heat sources we used sterno as a backup. We had a gas stove, and we had an electric DC power electric deal, but the gas one literally set the damn thing on fire. It caught those plastic hosing that was around the edges of that, and yeah, I remember I was like, we're sitting there one day, and like somebody goes, "Oh my God, the Masturbator 2000's on fire," and I went running out there, and they're like, "Go, get away!" And sure enough, I got within about 10 feet of it when it exploded.
Oh no!
One of the pictures I didn't include is that gas burner just like completely mangled. But no, we were, again, everything was experimental. We were playing around, but no, we had some interesting things happen there. Ron had heard some vocalizations on 2 different nights. So imagine it's Peter Byrne, Ron Moorhead, and me inside of this motorhome for 8 days, and we did find some tracks early on when we first came in. The Lewis or Young's River had no, it was the Lewis and Clark River. It washed out. There was a big slide, and down where the mud had slid down into the river, we saw some huge tracks that were like 5-6 feet apart from each other, but it was on our way in. We thought, well, we'll find some more. We didn't think about it, but we did find some other impressions, and then of course the vocalizations Ron heard, and then Ron had flown his private airplane, and Ron was a very veteran private pilot, and he flew in this Cessna Bushmaster plane that we had hoped to use as a that's a funny picture. We had hoped to use as do some aerial reconnaissance, but the weather, we were just so socked in, we weren't able to use it. So Ron needed to leave early and asked Peter to give him a ride back to the airport. And while they're gone, I was putting up some seismic ground sensors on that hillside behind, up above the vehicles you see there.
Mm-hmm.
The seismic ground sensors actually pick up vibration in the ground and will send a silent signal down to a receiver. And we can tell by the signal which ones are being tripped and be able to focus in that direction. And so while Peter was taking Ron back to the airport, I was left up there by myself, and I went up there on that hillside. Again, the weather was horrible. And so a hailstorm was moving in, and I could see it coming. And so I'm looking down the hill toward the camper thinking I'm not going to make it there before this hail hits. But I knew if I could just go maybe 50 yards up above me, there was some old growth timber that I thought I'd take shelter under these, 100+ foot trees that have been alive for 300 years, and wait it out. And while I did, I had to urinate. And when I got done and started buttoning up my trousers and buckling my belt, I got roared at from very close range.
Oh, Lord.
Probably 75, 80 feet at the most. One of the most incredible sounds I've ever heard in the wild, and kind of a cross between a full-grown African lion and a Tyrannosaurus Rex. It stunned me, to be honest with you. I was literally glued to the spot. I couldn't move for a couple of minutes, and so that was a fun one. And then in 2002, Ron, Peter, Al Berry, who was, some of you might recognize, Al Berry was with Ron Moorhead when he
Captured
when they
sound.
taped the Sierra Sounds.
Mm-hmm.
So, and of course Al and Peter are gone now, but it was Ron and I and Al and Peter in a small film team at Bluff Creek. Actually, we were camped at Louse Creek, or Louse Camp, I should say, which is on Bluff Creek. And we spent a week up there going in to rediscover the original Patterson-Gimlin film site by identifying certain trees in old photographs and comparing them with what was there at the time. And we filmed a documentary while we were there. And so
probably too many to pick out. Yeah.
Amazing times with Peter, and not just expeditions like that, but investigations. Amazing person. I mean, that guy, he's lived 10 lives in his lifetime, and he made it almost to 98. He was about a week and a half short of 98 years old, but he literally he lived so many lives in a wonderful life of adventure, and I'm just so honored to be able to have called him my friend for over 30 years. I miss him a lot, but he was so funny too. He had such a great sense of humor. He would, oh my God. It's like one time, I have a book over here, I'm looking right at it, and it reminded me of him. It's not about him, but it was a biography about a guy that had amazing adventurous life back in the late 1800s. And I said, Peter, I want to loan you this book. I think you'll really enjoy it. It really reminds me a lot of you. And he looked at me and he said, Todd. I said, yeah. And he goes, neither lend a book or a girlfriend. You will get neither back. And of course I laughed, but he was serious. He would not take the book,
That's great.
He just had this dry British humor. There's so many different things. He would always say, like, he would invite me somewhere, and I said, sorry, Peter, I won't be able to make it. He goes, well, Todd, it just wouldn't be the same without you. It would be much better. And what do you say to that?
Hey, that's when you know you're true friends, when you can give them
Oh,
hell, right? Rib 'em.
oh yeah. Well, yeah, but he was amazing, man. But good questions. Good question. I mean,
Well,
it's a
bringing back
million memories, million
bringing back
resumes.
memories, I could tell there was too many. There's too many to just pick a few. Danny Buckner's got a good question. Out of all the places that you've researched or, whatever, what's your favorite place? Now, I understand there could be some history here or there, but what was your favorite trip where you just couldn't wait to get on the road and get to it?
Phew, well, that's a loaded question. I mean, favorite places, but and then the most memorable. I mean, I've researched in Alaska to Arizona, California, of course here in Arkansas, Ohio, Florida, in the Green Swamp. Been around a lot of places, but I have to say that the most amazing um, field research I did was, and this it's a story itself, and I won't go into a whole lot of detail other than say was in probably the least likely place I would have ever thought, which was in the state of Nebraska. Yes,
Mm.
that big wide open flat corn as far as you can see and soybeans state. Uh, what I didn't realize was that on the border
Wyoming.
of Nebraska and Iowa is what separates them is the Missouri River,
Mm.
and um, along the Missouri River there are it's a kind of a river valley as you can imagine, and it's very heavily timbered and very rough country, mostly hardwoods, but extremely dense. And there along that river valley is the Omaha Indian Reservation. And I had been um, talking for years with some of the tribal members about encounters they claim to have had, and I had a hard time wrapping my head around certain things that they described because they're things that I prematurely put into that paranormal supernatural file. Things such as multiple visits, for instance, or even habituating the Sasquatch to an individual or a group of individuals, and the eye shine deal. But after 3 years, they invited me to come out, and so I said okay. And so I flew to Omaha City and rented a car, drove up to the reservation, and I spent a week on the reservation. And everything I had thought was impossible happened. Yes, they had established a relationship with this group of this species. They did. I witnessed it, and on a regular basis. And the eye shine, which I had delved into, but not deep enough to pull it out of that paranormal file, actually does happen, and I since have figured it out. But this, somebody says I've seen them before. I'm okay. Oh, I've seen them twice. Okay, I've seen them 10 times. Okay, and then I see them regularly anytime I want, and then okay, yeah, it doesn't happen that way. Well, I'm here to tell you, 5 nights in a row, always at night, generally after midnight, 5 nights in a row, 2 different locations, on the res, in the woods, during COVID, we had clearly contact every night, 5 nights in a row. And not just single individual. We had two, and a couple of times we had as many as 3 individuals. The eyes they don't shine. They don't put off light. What they do is amplify light that's on a scale that we can't see, but through the amplification process that animals with night vision have with the tapetum, tapetum lucidum, which is a whole other subject. But they're, because of the size of the eye and the amplification process, they can literally take light that we are unable to see. It's there. Just because we can't see it doesn't mean it's not there.
Right.
They can amplify it to a point, bring it up to a level where we can actually see it. And I saw it 5 nights in a row, 2 different locations. And it wasn't just the eye shine. It was the vocalizations that accompanied the eye shine. And what was most amazing was they were able to call them in using their native language. It was the most fascinating 5 days I've ever spent. And I've actually turned a few research friends onto them, and every one of them have come back having said they experienced what I experienced, and I knew they would.
Have
So,
they had a relationship with them for generations?
well, now I only knew 2 individuals, brothers, that I dealt with, but yeah, according to them,
Mhm.
that it wasn't just their generation, because there was, the elders would talk about interacting with them for several generations, and how certain things went under certain circumstances. Um, but yeah, they had certain contingencies if they had come upon one that had passed away, for instance, that they would supposedly give it an honorable burial and things like that, and as if it had happened numerous times in the past, and that's just the way it is. Um, um, they
Well,
claim to have traded with them and met
right.
with them more in the past than modern times, but it was amazing to go out to an isolated area in pitch black at midnight and have them call out. They would call out, "Oh, Kogi." This would mean "hello, friend." Sometimes they'd have to repeat it several times, but usually within a couple of minutes, all of a sudden these glowing eyes would show up. At first I thought I was being punked, but when
Mhm.
these things blinked, and when they turned side to side, and when they literally, physically the body moved left, right, forward, backward, I knew it wasn't, a
So
couple LED lights stuck up in a tree or anything.
when you saw the eyes, was it obvious that the head was wider than a human? Because
So it's it's very, as you can imagine, depth perception is difficult, especially at night.
right,
So, I could only guesstimate how far away they were,
right.
um, which was
It's
difficult. And
it's
so,
tough at night, yeah.
yeah, I mean, if I thought they were 200 feet away and they were 150 feet away, then I would say, yeah, their eyes looked really big, but
Right.
I didn't know. Now, that being said, I did kind of sneak back on the res one day during the daylight, because I knew how to get to this spot, and I was planning to meet up with these guys later. But for my own sanity, I needed to see what that area looked like in daylight. And I did kind of, I was pretty sure I established where they were standing. There was a ridge that used to have an old road on it, and you can tell it completely overgrown. You couldn't drive on it by any means, but and it was probably 150, 160 feet away.
Mm.
Based on that, I would say that the eyes were, after being able to make that determination from where we were standing, I would say they definitely fit the bill for a very large head.
I want to. There's so many questions and so many good questions, but a lot of times, with the facts and everything, we talk about the feelings because a lot of people, we got people that are in these places like you went to, but they're not friendly with them. They move somewhere, they build a house or whatever. I've got a friend right now. I go down to Alabama. If I leave at 3 a.m, I look both ways before I go to the truck because they're not going to be there all the time, but when they're there, it. So Verax asked when you said with the roar that you heard, when you said stunned, when being roared at, could he elaborate on the feeling? Was it fear or were you frozen or kind of like paralyzed? I've been through this before too. So to me, stunned was because of the volume and the length and the how low it was. It was very big. So what did it make you feel like when you heard that? Because you've already seen them.
No, this is a whole different situation. When I saw them in '93, there was a good distance between us.
Uh-huh.
And so there was no real safety concern. In this case, not only was I, enemy close or danger close, but I was completely alone. What was crazy was that we had brought.
You thought you were.
I had a 9mm handgun, a 12-gauge shotgun, and a Weatherby 300 Magnum high-powered rifle, and I left every single one of them down at the trailer. But no, when you talk to somebody who's had an experience, this probably. One of the tells I look for is not just body language, but eye contact. And one of the things I come to expect is absolutely no eye contact.
Mm-hmm.
Because if somebody's looking you square in the eye and say, this is what I saw, and it was like this, and blah, 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 versus you ask somebody to tell you what they experienced, generally they don't even look you in the eyes. They're looking off in the distance because they're not telling you what happened. They're literally reliving it.
Yes, sir.
And so, yeah. And so it is with me in this case. And I literally had to put my hands to my mouth when you asked me about it, because that was a very, very horrible time for me. I could not move. There was something. Certainly, part of me wanted to run for my life, but there was something much more primal that was speaking to me, saying, "If you want to live, do not move."
Right.
Kind of a thing, very primal. I felt that was my only option at the point, and I couldn't move. My hands were on my belt buckle when this thing went off, and 2 minutes later, my hands were exactly in the same position. 2 minutes, excruciatingly long minutes, and I don't even know if I blinked during that time. But I felt like I was hooked up to a car battery, to be honest with you. My entire body was tingling. And people refer to many, you hear it all the time about being what they call
some people use the word zapped.
And again, right. I hate the the words that people in the paranormal, supernatural side use, zapped orbs, mind speak, blah, blah. No, because someday there's going to be a really good scientific name applied to it. But anyway, some people call it zap. Now, at the time, I'd say in hindsight, I thought I chalked it up to adrenaline, a very heavy brain-induced jolt of adrenaline, as one would expect in a situation like that. So try to describe it to somebody else, and I found an individual, a friend of mine, we became friends, that had a very similar situation, very close range, like 50, 60 feet. And I told him I'd never felt so helpless as I did in that moment. And he looked me in the eyes and he said, "No, not helpless, hopeless." And I went, "That's it."
Yeah.
I wasn't for lack of help. I was for lack of hope.
Yep.
I knew that at that time and in that moment, I was not in control.
You was at their mercy. That's
Yeah,
right.
absolutely. The only analogy I am able to give anybody, and I think it's a pretty good one, is if you were pushed out of an aircraft at 20,000 feet, and you know how the movie's going to end,
Right.
and it's no parachute, right? And you've got 2 minutes before impact.
Right.
And I can only imagine that is about, if you can imagine how you would feel for those 2 minutes, knowing what's inevitable, you almost wish you have a heart attack before you hit the ground.
Well,
And that's about, I would say, is about as good of an analogy. Now, I will say this too. I actually had the opportunity to undergo hypnosis. Dr. Doug Meacham is a certified hypnotherapist in Portland, Oregon. And we got together. I said, I need to experience. So initially, our first session was my sighting, and he videotaped the entire session. I'd never been hypnotized before. And he's very good at what he does. And he took me back to that original sighting, and it's amazing his techniques of moving you around the scene virtually and
wow.
seeing, from the creature's perspective, and then halfway in between and stuff, trying to get some more detail and whatnot. But the second session was specifically about what I just described, this 1998 roar, scream. I don't.
It's hard to describe.
It is hard to describe, but
you can't. But the thing is, y'all, what he's doing is he wants to describe it, but he can't do it justice with words.
No, but I will tell you this. In that particular place, we had a word that we agreed upon, where when he got me coached down to a certain point, he would say this word, which would pretty much push me over the edge into really blankness, if you will, a blank canvas in my mind, and then bring in the situation without any extracurricular thoughts, get you right down to being there as best as you could ever be. And then we had another word that we agreed on that would bring me back out of it. And when he got me in that point, and I'm laying down on the couch, like you would think, that I had gripped my jeans, had my hands laying on my thighs, if you will, and I literally balled up my jeans into my fists as tightly as I could possibly. Any of the loose material in my jeans was caught up into my fists, and he had to. He called it short. He said the word. And I woke up with tears streaming down my face, and
And
I don't
I
want to go
know,
back there. I
no,
don't
you're
ever want to. I can say this, that, and you're talking to a soldier who's been shot at with mortars and rockets and bullets and all that shit. I mean, the real stuff, real world. I've never been, and never ever want to be at that level of hopeless fear
vulnerability and
ever,
fear.
ever, ever again. I that it. I don't even want to think about it. To be honest with you, I don't.
And
It messes with me.
I hate, when we get to talking about the feelings, some people kind of brush it off or whatever, but y'all in chat, some of y'all have gone through similar things. I know some of your stories, and it's a natural reaction when you're not in control of a situation. People know one of my stories. I had my son with me, and I'm like, what have I gotten us into? And so we felt, even though we had plenty of weapons with us and big enough, we felt undergunned to the point my son set his down. He set his down. I didn't tell him to. He set it down, and I held my hands up and I spoke out loud. We're not here to hurt you. We don't want to be hurt either. We're just curious. Just let us leave or whatever. And it kind of calmed down. And we had one more tree break snap right after that. But anyway,
yeah,
I go back to those feelings, and I know that's why a lot of people are here. And thank you for sharing that with us, because it helps some of the people here. I mean, and I know it's tough. I mean, it's when you go through a traumatic anything like that messes with you like that. We've got this as guys. We've got this when like I said earlier, when you're in the woods, you're the alpha or whatever. When you figure out you knock down a few rungs on the ladder, it's kind of a life-changing moment. So
it's one of those. It's one of those. Be careful what you ask for. And I honestly, I can't emphasize enough, and I'm not trying to scare anybody. People, you have those of us that know the truth, that know from experience, but there's 100 times more that believers, if you will, and God bless them, but none of them, or very few of them, seriously consider the potential consequences of getting what you ask for, because we are dealing with a wild animal, and one that very obviously has the physiology to overwhelm you, and most people, their thought is, you say, what's your goal? I just want to see one. And I can't help but say the next obvious thing. Then what?
Yeah.
And nobody considers the then what.
Right.
It's like a fantasy to them. I just want to see them. Well, how about I throw you in a swarm of great white sharks so you can see them. And well, no, I don't want to. No, but that's potentially what you're talking about.
Yep.
You know, a chimpanzee is 3 times as strong as a human and not as big. If you don't think these things can tear you limb from limb, they can. And generally speaking, there are more than anecdotal stories, that encounters, tens of thousands, in fact, where their general MO is to walk away.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't want conflict. However, there are certain circumstances, and there have been documented cases where they have been less than happy.
Mm-hmm.
But nobody is like, I just want to see one, maybe get a selfie with. No. Okay. Just what I tell people, they're like, okay, what do you do? I tell people, I want you, before you ever go out, I want you to do a little bit of meditation. And I want you to do some visualization. And I want you to close your eyes and visualize that moment, and visualize one perhaps less than 50 feet away from you. And you don't just get to say time out or
Be nice.
or say thank you, I'm leaving now.
Yep.
At that point, it's no longer your show.
Right.
And people don't do that. I do it every time I go out now. Every time I go out, I have to mentally prepare myself for that contingency, that if I do turn a corner or what something steps out on the trail, I got to play that scenario out in my head mentally, and it helps me to some degree, whether I see one or not, to at least know that I'm not just there for my version of the experience, because it is not completely up to me. I'll give you a really cool, I know we're running late, but I'm going to tell you one thing that happened, and then we'll probably have to wrap it up because I haven't even eaten yet.
Oh no, we don't want hangry, Todd.
No, that's my wife. My wife gets hangry. I actually bought her a Bigfoot shirt that says "hangry" on it. Something I never, ever expected that I would do. But it comes from, again, years of mental preparation. The 4th night, we were, I'm talking about on the reservation there in the Omaha reservation, we had moved on to a second site. First time we had been there, it was 4.5, 5 miles from the place we had been going the 3 previous nights, and ultimately the 5th night after this. But this one night they said, let's go to this other place. We started out at the original place, and we did see 1 or 2, but it wasn't as active as it had been the previous 3 nights. And they said, you know what, let's go to this other place. We call it Hard Knocks, whatever. And it's about 5 miles away, and every once in a while we get activity there too. And I go, okay. So we drove over hill and dale, some very rough roads in my little 2-wheel drive rental car, which never should have been on those roads. And we ended up popping out of the woods onto this logging road. And you're not going to believe this. So as we pull out onto this road, which I was very happy to see, he finally says, okay, stop here. Now, before I shut off the lights, because I'm driving, I realized I got my high beams on and I can see like 200 feet down the road. as far as the lights would shine. I don't know. It could have gone farther. I don't know. But I knew that when I shut off the lights, I had a straight road in front of me and a little bit of a straight road behind me. So, per standard operating procedure, we didn't have any lights, no flashlights, not even cell phones, lights, nothing. Pitch black. And I mean pitch black. If you were standing 3 feet from me, I couldn't see you. And they start calling out, and sure enough, within a couple minutes, all of a sudden, oh, look, there's one down the road. Now, again, we can't see the road. You got to understand this. I can't even see the car I'm standing next to, but we knew that the road was in front of the car, and we were standing by the car, so we kind of knew we were a little bit oriented as to where the road was, and said, Dad, down the road. And sure enough, I looked down the road, and probably I guess about 150 feet away, there's a set of eyes that are kind of glowing white-ish. And a minute or so later, we see another one at about our 3 o'clock, considering the road would be our 12 o'clock. We see one at our 2 o'clock, going to 3 o'clock, going to 4 o'clock, trying to circle around behind us. Well, these two guys got locking on this one that's coming around behind us. I'm fixated on this one down the road. And I got this stupid idea. And I turned to my friend and I go, okay, you guys have been doing this for quite a long time. I mean, 3 years that I know of, because I've been in touch with you while you're doing this. Yeah, we've been doing it a while. I says, you established a relationship with these things, right? Oh, yeah. Because, I mean, you can call them in. Yeah. I said, so if they wanted to ever hurt you, surely they would have done something by now. Oh, yeah, no, they don't. No, they don't want to hurt us. I'm like, all right. Let me ask you something. Have you ever thought about, I don't know, like maybe walking up to one? And I couldn't so much see his expression on his face, but I could almost feel it in the darkness. And he's just like, hell no. At which point I said, hold my beer. He's like, what? And I go, whatever happens, do not follow me. Don't make any noise. Don't try to talk to me. And at that, I turned and started slowly walking toward this set of eyes. That's about this time of year. Actually, it was kind of like November-ish, but whatever. It was, the leaves were down on the ground, and so every step I take, I'm crunching a leaf as I'm marching toward this set of eyes. And I close down to 100 feet, and then I'm down to about 50 feet, and I'm down to about 40 feet, and it's blinking. It's very organic. It's eyes, no question. But now I'm starting to slow down a little bit, as you can imagine.
Yeah.
Because I'm playing a game of chicken with a Bigfoot, and I'm like, one of us is going to blink, and I'm really hoping it's going to be him, whatever it is. And then I get down to 35 feet, and I'm going really slow. And now I'm like thinking, I'm recalling back to when I talked to a primatologist, Henner Fehrenbach, we talked about kind of role played what we would do in a case like that. And he had spent time in Africa with gorillas. And he said, well, when we are in the presence of these gorillas, generally we take a very passive stance. He said, what I would do would probably sit down on the ground, do not stare directly at them, keep them in your peripheral vision, but definitely do not open your mouth wide, because that is a threat gesture with primates, which would be a natural thing to do, like, but no. And he said, I'd like pick up a stick or a rock and play with it, and not look at them directly. Act like you don't even, like, they're there, but you don't give a damn. And in cases like that, we've actually had gorillas come right up to us and even touch us, So I'm thinking back, I'm hearkening back to that little discussion, and I've decided if I get a couple more steps, that's what I'm going to do. If it doesn't move, I'm just going to sit down in the middle of the road. At least I was pretty sure I was still in the road, and just do what Henry had told me, and that's just act nonchalant, disinterested, like, I do this every day. And I got within about 30 feet, I think, when all of a sudden this set of eyes goes from here to up here, at which point I'm just looking at it, and it's looking at me. It was like, I don't know, 3-4 seconds while we're just kind of staring at each other, I guess. And again, all I can see is the eyes. And then it suddenly turned to its left, my right, to where I can only see one eye now, right? And just walked off. And yeah, I was like, thank you.
Yeah.
And then I stood there for the longest time. I was like, is it going to come back? I mean, and then when I was fairly assured that it wasn't going to, I then did a 180 and realized that I can't see anything.
Oh man.
Because I told those guys to be quiet, and I didn't want to say anything, at least not till I was close. Anyway, so I'm, going from the car to the creature, I had, this set of eyes to line up on. Then when it left, I turn around, I can't see nothing. And so I fumbled my way back in that right direction, stepping off the road a couple times and getting back on it. And I got about 50 feet away, and I finally said, where are you? They said, oh, we're right here. He's like, you're alive. Yeah, thanks.
He didn't take you with him.
Well, he still talks about that crazy white boy that walked up on a Bigfoot.
That
was pretty wild.
Well, you did what your gut told you to do, and now and it was a dangerous game, but I'd say you won that game of chicken, right? Or they let you win.
I'd say it was a draw.
There you go. Yep. Y'all, this has been incredible. I wasn't expecting some of the stuff he shared with us. And Todd, thank you so much. Maybe you can come back sometime, or we can keep in touch,
Sure, I'd be more than happy to.
Because I mean, this helps a lot of people. There's a lot of discussion going on in chat. People, y'all can go back and check that out. There's people.
If I can just drop a shameless plug, I would.
For sure.
Just because I want to be able to answer some questions if anybody has some. Oh, right there. You got my phone number, so there's a good start. That is actually my working phone number, and you're more than welcome to call, except not tonight, because I'm going to go eat. No, not at breakfast, not at dinner. But I have a website, AmericanPrimate.org, O-R-G. But mainly the best way to get a hold of me is to get a hold of me on Facebook, just under my name, Todd Neiss. More than happy to chat with you there, friend you, do whatever. Or you can email me, and my email is American Primate. There's a pattern there. AmericanPrimate@AOL.com. Yeah, I'm like one of 5 people still on AOL. Yeah. When you've had it for 50 years, it's kind of tough to change. But anyway, yeah, AmericanPrimate@AOL.com, or that phone number you saw up there, or you just, again, reach out to me on Facebook. I'd be more than happy to chat. And I say I answer questions, but I can't guarantee I'll have the right answer, but I can tell you what, because trust me, there's probably not a question any of you are thinking that I haven't asked myself at one time or another. So don't be shy. Reach out to me. I'll be more than happy to chat with you. Otherwise, you can look for me out on the speaking circuit. Probably coming to a town near you. But anyway, if you want to just catch me on the private, just reach out. I'll be more than happy to chat with you. And thank you for having me. Really, I've enjoyed it.
It's been fun. Y'all, the people that are listening tomorrow and in the future, is Todd Neiss, Neiss. If you just Google his name and go to YouTube or go to some of the documentaries, you can binge on stuff that he's done. And thanks for coming in. And it's been a pleasure. I always love learning things from the guests, and some of the chat, people are experienced too, and they were right along with you, and some of the things you said. Next week, y'all, Bigfoot Fades. I won't say her real name until next week. She's going to be on from California. She cuts hair and she collects Bigfoot stories from the Pacific Northwest. Should be a fun time. And once again, Todd, thank you. Everybody in chat, thank you. And we're going to watch Doug Highcheck's amazing outro. Here we go. Bye-bye.
Thank you for having me.
Yes, sir.
Down in the pines where the water runs black, where the moss hangs low and the night leans back. The stories whisper about a shadow tall, big feet moving where the moonlight falls. Some say it be, some say it ghost in the trees. Some say trouble blowing in with the breeze. But around here, man, we know the call, or we just call them friends of Squatchin Holler. So light that fire, let the cattails shake, hear the night birds cry and the copperheads wait. If you hear a howl in the Georgia fall, that ain't no wind and it ain't no dawn. When the creek runs cold and the shadows get taller, yeah, you cross a line in a Squatchin Holler, where the legends walk and the brave men falter. Better mind your step in that Squatchin Holler. Tell me stories about a thing he saw, stood 10 foot high with a timber jaw. Red eyes burning like a summer cold, a left track's big enough to swallow your soul. But the old folks laugh, say don't you fear, critters been living here for hundreds of years. Treat them with respect when the moon gets smaller, and they'll let you live in Squatchin Holler. So light that fire, let the swamp drum roll. You can hear that right down in your soul. If you hear a grunt from the river crawl, it ain't no bullfrog barking at all. When the swamp runs still and the crickets get softer, you're not alone in that Squatchin dead. Some say he walks from bridge to bridge. But one thing's sure, when the night comes down, something big still calls this ground. So bank that fire, let the night get deep, let the willows whisper while the kudzu creeps. If you catch a glimpse through the midnight holler, just nod your head, don't scream and holler. 'Cause the wild runs free and the legends get taller.